I'm Peter, by the way.
Doctor Strange.
Oh, you're using your made-up names.
You know, it just feels so good. After that 2017 fever dream dumpster fire nightmare fuel that I refuse to call by its name.
You smell good.
The DC universe was at an all-time low, which is saying a lot. I remember being in some real denial after seeing that thing 3 years ago and thinking that maybe it wasn't that bad.
So love has blinded you?
But now, that is no more. No longer do we have to watch that movie and pretend like it's anything close to a Marvel team-up movie. It's a new day in the DC fandom. Just like Cyborg, we are not broken. And definitely not alone. We can finally forget that 2017 mess. You know, apart from the nightmares, which we'll never be able to forget. Complete with Superman's upper lip, obvious reshoots, PS2 CG Grandpa's weird obsession with Mother, and whatever the heck made Joss Whedon think this was funny dialogue.
Well, I'll see if she'll take your call.
So it's a shame.
It's not a shame.
Sorry, it was just so quiet.
Because yes, as soon as Warner Bros. Finally realized how much money they could make from this, they finally released the Snyder Cut. And, wow. To anyone that thinks that this is just the same movie back in 2017, I'm sorry, that's just a straight up lie. You can now like it, and I understand if you don't, but there's no way this is anything comparable to whatever that was. But I do love how this is getting such universal praise, because it truly deserves it. Everything in this is better. Literally everything. It's honestly mind-boggling that Joss Whedon looked at some of these scenes and decided to cut it. And I get it, the studio must have had some restraints. But let me get this straight. In the theatrical cut, we didn't have time for Cyborg's emotional character arc, but we had time for this.
Like brunch. Like, what is brunch?
Which, by the way, Cyborg completely steals the show. But, yeah, no wonder no one cared for him back in the 2017 cut. He didn't do anything, except just brood in his apartment the whole time, which is understandable, but the Snyder Cut takes it even further. In this one, he is just straight up angry. Angry at himself. Angry that his dad was the reason he died, but also the reason he couldn't stay dead. He doesn't see himself as anything more than a pile of scrap metal, and it was so interesting and actually emotional to watch. Yeah, did Whedon forget that these movies can be emotional? Because I teared up multiple times during this movie, and all scenes that were cut from the 2017 version. I mean, like, I teared up in the theatrical cut, but mainly because I was begging Superman's upper lip not to murder me in my sleep. But back to Cyborg, it was really just like watching a character study of a man who felt he lost everything. He doesn't accept the world, and he doesn't even accept himself, and his awkward, angular, and slim design only made it even seem more difficult for him. It almost reminded me of Joker in a way. Although, well, that movie ended in, you know. This one ended in a way which felt so perfect for the Cyborg character. The world is about to end, he has the mother boxes in front of him, and they pull a Suicide Squad, showing a world in which he desires. A world where he's whole. However, he gives off the most emotional line of the movie, saying, "I'm not broken." A man, mostly made up of machine, was confident in his perfect imperfections enough to consider himself not broken.
Riley, are you crying?
Look. Stairs.
It really is a great theme of self-love and acceptance, and definitely one of the biggest takeaways I had in this film. Which they kinda did in the 2017 version with the whole,
So I really like being alive. So do I.
but like, come on, this was so much more impactful. They didn't give that 2017 version time to breathe, because they literally didn't have time. Except, again, they somehow had time for this.
Yeah. Oh, something is definitely bleeding.
But that whole Cyborg acceptance scene wouldn't have even been a thing if it wasn't for the breathtaking scene before, starring my guy, Flash. And wow. Just like Cyborg, they did him dirty in the theatrical cut. Except, at least in that one, Cyborg actually had a reason to be there. Flash went from obsessing over brunch and being overshadowed by Superman in the theatrical cut to literally saving the world in the Snyder Cut. After being shot by the parademon while traveling at the speed of light. Which, yeah, is probably the most contrived thing in the movie. But let's just pretend it was Deadshot in disguise and call it a day. So anyway, Flash gets shot and starts having a breakdown, which I thought was so powerful. Seriously, there was some really good acting in this movie. Ezra Miller, Ray Fisher, and Amy Adams all had scenes that literally made me tear up in this movie. But, might as well cut that out. Gotta make room for the Nickelodeon slime.
Yes! It was gross! Oh!
The wounded Flash then sees the explosion from the Unity, and does the only thing he can do. go back in time. As soon as he entered that Speed Force and that Junkie XL score swelled behind him, I had chills. It looked fantastic. And the actual emotion throughout the scene made it even better. Because all those scenes he had with his dad before actually had payoff here. In the other movie, it was really only there for backstory. But they just read it off to us like off of a checklist. This whole Speed Force scene was not only incredibly emotional, but a huge heroic moment for the Flash. It's honestly insulting how much they underutilized him in the other one. Superman just came in and completely overshadowed everything that made him special. All he was really able to do was save that one Russian family, who, by the way, doesn't make an appearance in this, and it's a much better movie.
Coincidence? I think not!
Now, those Cyborg and Flash scenes were among my favorites of the film, but not my absolute favorite. The thumbnail may be a spoiler as to what my favorite moment is, but before I get to that, there are some things I want to knock out. And by some things, I mean a lot more than some things, because it is a 4-hour movie after all. First off, that music. Junkie XL is a legend. He brings the perfect amount of weight and gravitas to these scenes, especially in that Flash Speed Force scene. And gravitas is something which was just non-existent in the theatrical cut. In fact, I don't even remember that film having a score. They really should have used the established themes in the DCEU so far, because anything with the Man of Steel or Wonder Woman theme in this movie was just so epic. Which, not to flex or anything, but I can play on piano. Even in this movie, we get some additions, complete with ancient lamentation music anytime Wonder Woman does literally anything. Also, can we please talk about Steppenwolf for a moment, which is something I never thought I would be saying, especially after that theatrical cut. In that movie, all he was a PS2 CG grandpa who constantly talked about mother or whoever that is. But here, he actually had a personality, motivations, and I even felt bad for him at some points. How did they do that? I'm serious. When Desaad said Steppenwolf still had to conquer 50,000 more worlds before he could come home, I almost audibly gasped. It really put things into perspective. This world meant nothing to him, making him even more threatening in a way. It was just one of 50,000 more trips he had to make before he could finally come home. Just in that one line of dialogue, it immediately made him both more threatening and gave him a sympathetic quality. And in the theatrical cut, they just cut it out for like no reason. It was only one sentence of dialogue. They could have easily kept it in that cut. But, you know, again, if they kept that character development, we wouldn't have time for this.
Dostoevsky.
Now, for Aquaman, he was pretty much the same, although he already has his own movie, so he didn't need much. And it was kind of funny how they were telling us his backstory as if we hadn't already seen it in the 2018 version. Wonder Woman was just amazing as always, except even better here. She really is just so powerful and awesome. And I loved how she actually went to check up on the people she saved after fighting off the terrorists. And even if her dialogue with that one girl was kind of cliche, it was still classic Wonder Woman. Batman was also done far better here. It wasn't his dark, BVS self, but that was intentional. That was his whole arc in the last movie. Which, by the way, it was so heartbreaking seeing how he was tearing up when Superman died. And he doesn't totally get beat up the whole movie either. Also, two more things. One, this small insignificant shot of him walking through that smoke was so cool for like no reason. And two, there was a small moment when they were fighting Superman where he actually helps one of the military soldiers get to safety. Again, it was such a small thing, but it was so cool seeing him personally save someone. Some other small things here, I could have done without Flash feeling Iris's hair while her life is flashing before her eyes, but whatever. It was still a great scene visually, and I personally liked the music, even if you could argue it was kind of out of place. Darkseid, even though he had a small role, he still felt really great and had a lot of presence. The Amazons were awesome as always, and I personally like Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor, so I'd like seeing him again. I also liked how much screen time Ryan Choi had, who was supposed to become the Atom. And Martian Manhunter was just amazing to see. I really wish I didn't know he was going to be in this going in though, because I would have lost my mind. But he has the perfect, calm, collected voice, and I personally thought he looked good. Now, of course, before we can get to my favorite part of the movie, which again, spoiler, is in the thumbnail, we have to talk about the one, the only, Jared Leto's Joker. It was good. It was obviously a tacked on scene at the end, but I thought he was not bad. Sometimes he still does get a little too weird, even for Joker, but I thought he has some great comic-esque lines, especially the "How about a truce, Bruce" line. And Batman was just awesome in this scene. I would love to see more of both of them. But yes, we've made it. My favorite scene in the movie. The one where I was just smiling like an idiot through the whole way through. None other than Superman's return. Now, let me give you some context. I love Superman. I mean, I'm just a kid from a small town in Kansas too, so his story always hit close to home. I guess, quite literally. But anyway, even though it just feels like the whole world is against him, even though he doesn't owe anyone a thing, he still feels like it's his moral obligation to help people. And there is nothing more inspiring than that. When he walked through that Kryptonian ship like back in Man of Steel, I just straight up got chills. And then they hit me with even more nostalgia from that movie. Which, by the way, how has it been 8 years since that movie came out? But anyway, both of his fathers start speaking to him, and I just lost it. I had the biggest grin on my face, and it only got better, because then that Hans Zimmer theme kicked in, and he shot up into the sky with Pa Kim telling him to fly. Then we get my favorite shot of the movie, the one in the thumbnail of the video you're watching. As cliche as it sounds, it really did feel like Superman was back. And in the theatrical cut, that was the worst thing they did to Superman. Apart from, well, you know. But it just felt weak when he came back, because there were absolutely no stakes or scenes like this. And he was just kind of like, ah, fine, I guess I'll go help them, and by help I mean single-handedly take down the PS2 Steppenwolf and completely overshadow Flash. But here, as he extended his arms over the earth, he was actively flying up to regain power for the sun and help in any way he could to save the people he owes nothing. Just absolutely beautiful, and simply amazing. Honestly, talking about this masterpiece of a movie, it just makes me want to rewatch it. I'm sure there's a few things I missed here and there, but overall, this was the most enjoyable movie experience I've had in a long time. And I'm so glad it's being universally praised, because that's what it deserves. I know not everyone will like the movie or Snyder's style, but I personally just can't get enough of it. It'll definitely be interesting these coming months to see what WB does with the Snyderverse. I have a feeling this went way better than they were expecting. So maybe after all, we could finally see them restore the Snyderverse. I sure hope so. But if not, then I'm just glad I finally got to see my favorite heroes all together in a movie that respected each and every one of them. Because it's exactly what these legendary characters deserve. And at least now we can all burn our copies of the theatrical cut.
You were the chosen one! I hate you!